Kia ora koutou and welcome back to episode 2 of Full Credit. My goodness, have I even recovered from yesterday? Probably not. I'm a bit dusty. Was that the sun or was it the beers enjoyed on the sideline? Who knows? With me, of course, though, is Les Elder. How are you, Les?
I'm good. I'm a little bit the same. I'm recovering. I had one really red eye from the sun. I can't have the beers because baby brewing, but glad that you got to enjoy some for us.
Oh, well, look, I think it was a case of at one point in the game, I realised watching the Hurricanes Poua, this is probably as good as it's going to get. The sunshine on the sideline is probably going to be the better day to enjoy than perhaps how I was watching my home team perform. But, you know.
I know, both of us with our home teams, yeah, I mean, mine wasn't quite the blowout that yours ended up being, but still to watch your home team go down. And now what's that? I think 3 games on the trot, 4. Yeah.
Yeah, not flash. What we can tell you though is even though we are sad, we actually both predicted that this was going to happen. So I was thinking we should have made sure to post this somewhere, and maybe we will make sure to do that this week, because when it came to that first game with Matatū getting up over the Manawa, so the final score there was 31 to Matatū, 25 to the Manawa, you were pretty spot on that, Les. I think your prediction was 28-25. Not bad, not bad.
A little bit of me is glad that we didn't publicly post that, because that is the first time I've actually predicted a Manawa loss. I'm sorry, my girls. I'm sorry, my team.
Look.
But I did. I that was what I went with. That's what I felt. And yeah, gutted that I was right.
I mean, look, Liz, it's going to get easier. I can tell you as someone who frequently has to bet against their own side. It's never a nice feeling. I always want to be wrong, but in the case of the other match, the Poua and Blues, I mean, we both had predicted that it was going to end up being a bit of a blowout, but the score there, ultimately 50 to the Blues and 10 to the Poua. Both you and I, though, thought that the Poua was going to score more. I had 45-26. You had 42-30.
Yeah.
In the end, though, my team were never really fired.
Nah, and to be honest, I love that you said that, because I've just seen, I think, Nat Delamere post, like, don't give up on us. We didn't even pull the trigger. So I think they will know that was nowhere near their potential, right? Like, that was probably the big surprise for me for the weekend, was the blowout between Poua and the Blues. We both predicted that the Blues would get up, but I didn't think by that much and that early in the game.
No, and the thing there too was, like, we all knew, everyone and their dog knew that the Blues are going to be the team to beat this year. Like, we talked about that retention rate. They've held the team together. They've got those key personnel, the people they brought in, for goodness sake, more black ferns aplenty. All of that stuff's positive. But yeah, the Poua, set piece. We'll get into the stats when it comes to it, but mate, when you don't have that type of, when you're not nailing your core roles, and here we go, jargon for you people. Set piece is your scrums and your lineouts. Scrums, that's the big pushy hug in the middle of the field, and a lineout, that's what you do when the ball's been kicked over the touch and you're chucking it back in there. Both of those things should launch your attack, but when you're not nailing the core role, like the Poua weren't on Saturday, it's going to be really hard to get anywhere, and unfortunately I think they felt that.
Yeah, 100%. And surprisingly, so did Matatū, right? Their set piece, which we're going to talk about soon, wasn't to their standard, I'd imagine.
No, yeah, I would say, knowing the standards that Georgia Ponsonby holds for herself, I know she'll be frustrated with a couple of the lineouts going skew with. What I will say, though, the other things that surprised me were a couple of positive things, and that, like, that back three for Matatū, I had said I had question marks on, we said 1 through 13, pretty strong. Who's on the edge? What are they going to do? Well, these young ones stood up, and look, Winnie Palamo was excellent, but I also thought Kaya Nepia, she just grew in confidence as that game went on.
Well, I actually did the, for those of our listeners that don't know, I do a bit of commentary at these games, and in my pre-match interview with Whitney Hansen, I actually asked about Kaya Nepia. So she is a Waikato girl that played in the FPC final, was a winner of that. She's actually a Bay of Plenty girl, but is the niece of Liam Messam, and he wanted her to play for Waikato. And she had a great year with Waikato last year. I seen her in the semi-final and thought, oh, this girl's got something special. And I thought it was her calm demeanour. Probably didn't perform to her ability in the final, and maybe as a 10 and being so young, it's a lot of pressure. But Whitney had all great things to say about her and was like, even off camera, sort of mentioned Kaya is a girl that has got something special, and give her some time and I think we're going to see something. So that's exciting to hear about that young kid.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and look, should we just dive in then and talk about, I sent through to you my first guess. If we were assembling a first 15 out of the performances over the weekend, now that we're naming names, we may as well continue to do that. So starting with the front row, my pick of the litter was we would start with Chris Valeko. Even though she got a card, it was a team one. So I'll let you off on that this week, Chris. And my hooker of the week would be Atlanta Lolo here. And then I would actually be naming in her Super Rugby debut, for goodness sake. I asked questions about her. She answered them. Would be Vaisinia Mahutariki Whakalilo. Sorry, sis. I'm going to keep practicing that name because I'm going to be saying it a lot this year. She was fantastic straight out the gate against, a lot of experience.
100%. She was actually one of my surprises in the selections. And only because, and please, Vay, if you're listening to this, you know I love you. A lot of these young girls, actually, this isn't us having to go at you. This is us just being objective. And I think it's something that the game needs. So for me, I was quite surprised that she got the start over two current Black Ferns, Crystal Murray and Tanya Kalunavali. And I asked that in the pre-match interviews with Dwayne Sweeney, was this part earned and part tactical, thinking that maybe he was unleashing those girls off the bench to bring in that firepower after that sort of 50, 60-minute mark. But he actually mentioned it was mainly part earned. So that was really cool to hear about Vay. And then for her to go on and put in the performance that she did, she caused a tight head, which then led to a try for Ruby Tui, the opening try of the match. She made some good carries and things like that. So that was awesome for her. And I think for us too, let's be happy to be proved wrong.
Yeah.
Hey.
1,000%. I am always stoked, particularly when it comes off like, oh, I didn't expect them to perform and then they do amazing. Why would we ever be sad about that? Why would we ever be sad that there are more front rowers going? And how could we ever doubt the production room that has been the Waikato? Every single prop we've seen in recent years, if you're like, oh, who's she? She's come out of that region. We've got to stop being surprised that they seem to just be breeding them up there.
100%. So I love that for her.
I will give a couple of honourable mentions to the front row too, because of course I will. That was my position. I want to say Awhina Tangenwai Noho. Now she actually ended up playing quite a lot of that game for the Blues when she came on, and I thought she was fantastic. It's been really, I was anxious for her, knowing how long this journey has been back to the field. So seeing her come on, seeing her look like she's so sharp, and by the same token, Grace Ngango is the same thing for me, because that had been a big journey back from her. She has been putting in the graft, and wasn't she great off the bench?
Well, to get 2 tries off the bench, right? I'm with you on that. It's awesome to see these girls back on the field. And for some of our listeners, you won't see me on screen, but I am clapping because I am cheering. I am cheering for these women that they're back on the field after all the hard work and struggle they've been put through. Well, they've put.
Yeah, and Denise, you're going to get the start for me surely for the Poua this weekend, because that last try, she was burning off the outside backs on the outside. And considering, again, she was someone that came on quite early, she played most of that second half. And so in the 83rd minute, having a prop running down the sideline, that's the type of conditioning you want from your front row.
100%. I remember her in 2023 for Hawke's Bay, and I was like, who is this woman? She is amazing and physical, which I love in my front rowers, right? Is physical girls that just go out there to hurt somebody. But she came on and was ball playing with a back, She gave the pass, got the return pass, and then gassed it for a try to finish off a bit of a consolation try for the Poua. But that was epic to see from a front rower.
And of course, a shout out also to Kira Sewer Smith, who was a late injury cover call up onto the edge there. She actually, typically in the Wellington club scene, you actually see her play in the pivot. She's a good Louis halfback, can also play 10, and I think you saw that in that little 1-2 down the sideline. That was no winger is shaping up to pass like that on the outside. So, you have to give it to her there. That was definitely inspired, I think, from the inside. Okay, lock pairing. For these two, I ended up going with Maya Roos and Laura Bayfield. Now, I think Maya was everywhere, and we'll see that when we dig into what the player stats themselves are. She's also, for me though, really growing as a captain with her referee management, because you best believe I saw her straight away on the referees at the halftime break. The Poua had just started to get a little bit of momentum there, and she stuck to them like glue, wanted to have the conversation about, are you sure my player needed to be put in the bin? And I love that type of confidence and game management seem to start to really important role managing a referee, right?
100%. I mean, it's probably one of the hard skills to develop as a new captain, right? Is how you approach referees, the language you use, your understanding of the game and how you're seeing it unfold. And I seen that too. I seen that at halftime. I was like, oh, look at her go. She's chasing the ref. Good on you, Maya. Good girl. But I also thought too, her delivery, her articulation and her speaking in her interviews, not just her post-match interviews, but also her I think she did an interview for the news leading into the game, and one of the questions she got asked was around the World Cup. And I thought it was real mature of her to say, well, we're not thinking too far ahead, we've still got to perform in this competition right now. And just seeing that maturity for some of these youngsters, it's awesome to see.
Oh, and absolutely. I think you're right to raise that too. Because look, she was a little camera shy when the first time they put them on her, and so to see that, obviously she does that leadership and those comms on the field, but starting to see her become more comfortable, even just that little clip we put up of name the 3 words to describe your team, her delivery on that was super smooth, and she picked 3 good ones, I reckon, in terms of how you would describe the Blues. So no, love to see it. Laura Bayfield though, I feel like I wanted to give her a shout out there because look, she's another one that's kind of just been grafting away, and we have a lot of conversations. Of course, Mama Vaipulu was fantastic. Chelsea Bremner back for Matatū also strong. But I was like, Laura, that try that she scored at a very crucial time for Matatū, pretty good handling there, and an interesting running line. I was like, you are tactically cutting a defensive line there. Good on you, girl. But yeah, so I thought I would give her the nod there.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And I love Mama Vaipulu as well, but I do think Laura played really well. Another youngster who I did a pre-match interview with and speaks really well. You could just tell naturally she's a leader because I asked her questions about herself and she just deflected and made it all about the team. So that's always an early sign of the type of person you're dealing with here. But yeah, I think so far your 5 there are pretty aligned with what I think too.
All right, now I'm heading into controversy because I'm talking about your part of the field. I'm talking about the back row. Now, in terms for me for a flanker for the blind side, I'm going to go with Elizabeth Moimoi. I thought she was relentless for the Blues. A lot of line breaks, a lot of carries, a lot of work at the ruck too. She's going to be my starting 6. But the starting 7... that's where we might have a point of contention, Les. And I swear I'm not just wearing my Hurricanes Poua hat, but for me it has to be Eleanor Plumcombe. She was unreal for my side, the bright spot, really, and otherwise a pretty tough day in the capital.
Did you just call her Plumpkin? Is that like a nickname you've made up for her?
I misspoke. Eleanor Plumking. And just on that, while we are talking about her name, her first name is Eleanor Plum. Okay, some people, I think, we're looking at it and they have assumed that there is a hyphen in the wrong place and they are hyphenating your last name, Plum King. No. And I can also tell you this is the type of depths that we go to you on this podcast. Me and Bailey got home on Saturday night, sent a voicemail to Eleanor Plum's sister, who Bailey knows, who also has a fruit name, and we said, what is going on with your whānau and fruit? And it turns out 3 of the 7 siblings all have fruit in the first name. So it is on purpose. I don't know if the rest are vegetables, but Eleanor Plum is her name. We got to put respect on it.
I did not know that. That hyphen is floating around everywhere in rugby. I'm so glad you cleaned that up. So her name is Eleanor Plum. We're so sorry for getting that wrong. And they're so nice, these girls. They don't correct anybody. You need to correct people. Be proud of your name and say it. But yes, she had a phenomenal game. I went in real clear that Kennedy Tukuafu was the starting seven for this week's 15. I thought she had an outstanding game. She was relentless on defence. And I think just knowing Kennedy personally, I knew that she was going to have a good game from the first tackle she made off the kickoff. When she went flying in there, no breaks, and made that first tackle, I was like, cool, we've got angry Kennedy here today. She's going to perform. And she did. She had a great game. What was it? 3 turnovers. She got a try. She was great in her, successful, like gain line carries were strong. But I think the thing that for me was the turnovers and crucial moments of her game. And so me and Alice have gone through a bit of a debate on this, who actually should be the 7 for this week. And sorry, Kens, but I think Alice has put up a great fight here. Some of these stats for Eleanor, which... mate, you're going to have to rattle off for us to actually paint the picture of the damage Eleanor Plum done this week.
Honestly, I think the first thing I want to draw your attention to is in terms of carry meters. So she, if you look at the top 10 for this week, is the only forward in there. And I think that tells you, how epic that is, because if you look at everyone else, there's always a bias when it comes to carry meters. That's how long are you running with the ball in your hands? There's always a bias with that it goes to your back three, because a lot of the time they get like a free 20 meters on every carry because they might have caught it at the back and then run up to the line before they're doing it. So Eleanor, not just in the top 10, she's number 2. She only ranked behind Portia Woodman. I mean, 149 running meters from her this week was immense. But also right up there in terms of number of tackles made. I think she was the 3rd most tackles for the Hurricanes Poua. Also ruck work. She was generally the first one arriving there, and while she made all those tackles, her effectiveness was also pretty good. So while she was making them, it's still a 90% success rate on those that she was getting in there. So she was giving me on both sides of the field, attack and defence. You just thought she had someone on her shoulder a couple of times. The Poua could have put a few more points on the board.
100%. And I watched that game. I shot home and watched it on replay, and I seen a lot of the attacking stuff, the line breaks that she was making, explosive speed. Oh, she'd got to be up there with one of the fastest 7s in the game. But I questioned, or I challenged Alice on what was she like on D, because I didn't pay attention to that when I was watching the game. And then when Alice rattled off some of those stats, she was working hard on both sides. But to achieve some of those things on attack for a team that's going nowhere, for a team that's literally getting beaten, that's impressive for that young girl. So awesome work,
Eleanor Plum. Congratulations. Now my number 8, this one's going to be surprising to you. It's Liana Michele too. Like that was a pretty straightforward one, and I think we're both in agreement there.
Yeah, absolutely. Kaipor Olsen Baker, while she was up there with her offloads. I think she made 3 offloads in the 40 minutes that she was on. She did come off at halftime as she's on a return to play, but they need to get the ball in her hands more, the Matatū.
Honestly. I just want to see her doing more of those 8 picks that she did last season and absolutely destroyed everyone. Okay, backline. Now, straight away, you and I are at loggerheads around our number 9. And I think I probably am being biased here when I just think Iritana Hohaia. I just, when you're talking about with Kennedy, I think this is again when we've got the emotional attachment to what's going on here too. Because when you're talking about Kennedy making those key turnovers when it mattered, Iri, for me, made a couple of really big hits when it counted. Like that tag team that her and Cassie Siatanga did on Portia Woodman-Whitcliffe at one point, holy hecka! For like 9-10, chopping her in half. It was crazy. So she, though, I would say, ended up getting pulled in way too much into that defensive line. And that then led to particularly Roahei Demont's first try, because while she's making these great tackles, she's getting in there, she actually shouldn't have to. She should be able to rely on those inside her to get it done, so she can do the organising role that's so important for a 9, particularly around the ruck. So when Lou had scored her first try and she just looked up and then ran over the top of the ruck, that's a number 9 killer. I know that Iritana would have been feeling frustrated with that one.
Yeah, she had a phenomenal defensive game, and she made some great attacking decisions as well. try at the end there was contribution to her quick play, her quick tap and pass. But yeah, I thought that same as you, because she was drawn into so much defense or was applying herself on defense, it meant that she wasn't available to game drive as well as the Poua probably needed. So there was a bit of it lost a bit of shape, I think, because of some of the decisions around game maintenance. So valiant effort by her, but I actually thought that Maya Joseph was the 9 of the round. I thought her attacking play was phenomenal. I thought her distribution game was great. I think what I love to see, another surprise I'm chucking in there, is what we seen last year, that Maya Joseph probably had a tendency to opt to kick when she found herself in open play. And she did instinctively go to do that in one occasion in the Manawa Matatū game, but she chose to distribute, and I thought it was the perfect option, especially when you've got a Winnie Palamo outside you on the wing, and I think Amy Duplessis was there as well. So that for me showed growth in her game as well, and I hope we continue to see that for her. She also made some great kicks, got a 50-22 in the first half, which was awesome. So did Iritana though. But probably there was and I hope Maya doesn't mind us saying this, but there was a kick pass there that lost them about 30 metres.
Oh, yeah.
Which I think even she knows, didn't quite get that one right. But I thought Maya was great, and her combination with Hannah King is just growing. It's so good for, I think, us nationally. If they're our 19 combo, it's so good they're playing together.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why I will concede Maya to you at 9. And I think both of us agree that the 10 is Hannah King, because that combination and pivot at the moment, it is the sharpest one out there. One of the things that did surprise me when I was looking at the stats is, I think, similar to when you were saying with Eleanor Plum that you didn't quite notice the defensive. I don't think I noticed how many tackles that Hannah King made in that game. You know, she was actually, again, for a first 5, making quite a lot of tackles and making them pretty effectively, which I was surprised by, because unlike Iri, she was actually then available, you know, so it wasn't like it was something that took her out of her core role. So I think she had a fantastic game. Gosh, some of her touches are beautiful, and I was kind of cursing that we let her leave.
You know, I mean, I love the work she does around the back of a pod. And what I see Matatū do is sometimes they hit the first receiver in their pod, who then tips onto the second, who then tips onto the third, and Hannah King's wrapping around. That's how they get their width quite quickly. And I thought they did that quite nicely a couple of times. Georgia Ponsonby, I think, gave a great ball to Hannah King on a wraparound, which then led to the Laura Bayfield try. So yeah, I like the work she does around those pods, Hannah King. She's building.
Yeah, and like we say, always having that option. She can distribute, and she can pass, and she can get. She's just got an all-round skill set. So yeah, it'll be exciting to see how she goes next week as well. Now, number 11. I kind of had a few different people in brackets, but I think I just have to be honest and say Portia Woodman-Whitcliffe. Like, you know, she was unreal for them, and she did what she does best, which is like be's a magnet for a bunch of players, create space around her as well as from herself, and just how, you know, she gets through everyone, right? How are we still letting her do that?
Yeah, I mean, her reputation just freaks people out, I think, eh? But I mean, I seen her pretty much flat foot Monica Tangawai, and I think Monica may have fallen over. Like, that's what Portia can do to anybody. So Mons, don't feel bad about that. But she was great, and just her ability to draw in people, which then opens up for someone else. Like, yeah, Portia was pretty classy.
And is it exciting for the Blues that it looks like their second option with her is at centre? Because I thought it was really interesting. You know, when they sent Kristen Cottrell to the bench, I was like, okay, so they brought on Jamie Colossi, and I was quickly trying to, like, eagle eye. It's actually quite hard when you're watching games at stadiums, can I just say? So it was like checking. Has she gone? Yes, she has. And her at centre is exciting, and that also led to probably one of the most exciting tries that we saw with Braxton Sorensen McGee in the corner. But she did a lovely cutout pass that, again, because she was sucking everyone into her at centre, like, you have that on the outside, but if you pull her in, she can be even more of like a magnet to people and just create all that space outside her.
Yeah. I think here's a time to also pump up the tyres of another youngster, though, because we were tossing up between Portia and Reese Anderson. So I thought Reese Anderson had a great game as well for the Manawa. Um, and it looks like she was their punch player, which
Yeah.
she did so well, but I'm not sure that should be her role.
But, it has to say, like, in terms of a lot of the meters that were made for that team, so a lot of the go forward, it came down her wing, which I'm sure people, if they were looking at the team sheet ahead of the game, they would have assumed it was on Tui. So big props to her. And the backline at Manawa that has a lot of big names, a big deal to stand out alongside Ruby Tui and Renee Holmes. So, yeah, definitely. Shout out to her. Number 12, though, Roa Demont. I always prefer watching her play 12. Can I just be honest?
Oh, I love her as a 10. I love her as a 10, but she is so good as a 12 as well. And I thought this weekend was just leaps and bounds above the other 12s.
Yeah. She just, I don't know, the presence of mind from her, right? Like, she's just always looking. I think maybe it's just that she has probably one of the best, like, visions now, I think, in the game. And I think, unlike some of our other more experienced players, also still has the toe to be able to back that up. Like, some of us can see it, but unfortunately we also see ourselves not making that gap.
Yeah, 100%. She's got some wheels and so deceptive in that as well. And another thing that I don't know, I often, because I just love a ruck, is she can turn over ball.
Yeah.
She is really good at ball turnover. So, yeah, she was a standout 12.
She was. Outside her, Amy Duplessis. She was so important to Matatū when they needed her. She was immense again, both sides, attack, defence. I just thought she had one of the better games I've actually seen her play.
Yeah, I seen a fearless Amy, to be honest. It just looked like there was only one way she was going. She didn't give a care about anything else. She was just like, I'm here to perform well. She got 3 tries, 1 disallowed, but she had a great game, Amy.
She did. Now, the other wing, I've gone Caitlin Vahakolo, which is interesting because actually the other one I had in brackets for 11 was actually Aisha Letiainga, because while Aish didn't necessarily have the open up game on attack, she managed to shut Caitlin down for quite a lot of that game. But I think the fact that she managed to get around her a couple of times, that's why I'm giving it to her on the outside there.
Oh, there were moments there where I was just in my house surrounded by my brothers, my husband, and I was just like, don't we just love seeing these two powerhouses go against each other? Like, it was real cool to watch. Great battle between those two. I think they did it to each other, actually. I think maybe Caitlin did the first one where she carried in, motored, like got back up, played the ball, went again, caught Aish out. And then I think Aish did the exact same thing to her not long after that. So, yeah, they did well to pretty much cancel each other out. I would have loved to have seen them both with ball in hand in open space.
Oh, I know. We didn't get the edge that we would have wanted. But yeah, 15 for me this week. I'm giving it to another little baby on debut doing amazing things. That's got to be Braxton Sorrison McGee. All the Storm girls have been telling us, like, if you talk to anyone in the Auckland Storm, they're all like, our baby's it, and I get it. I get it now, watching that on the weekend. She was, again, playing with like a lot of confidence, a lot of time. Seemed like she had it back there when, let's be honest, it was quite messy at times. She seemed to have some. So, yeah, she was a standout for me at the back.
Absolutely. She has that touch sort of look to her, you know. I'm not too sure if she plays touch. I think she has touch background. But the way she, like her in and out, her evasion, even the dive try, like that's a skill. That is a skill.
It's just the one skill that Amy Duplessis did not pull off. I love you, Amy, but what were you doing? How did you dive and land on your knees, sis? What was that?
Maybe we could get her in to ask us. Does she do any dive training? But yeah, Sorensen McGee, Braxton was outstanding. And like you said, so much confidence for such a youngster. 18 years old? And speed. She was quick.
She was. She's exciting. Okay. But that's who we've named in our 15. Feel free to disagree with us. Yeah. I mean, that's the whole point, right? It's a debate. There's always going to be people in and out each week. And you're just trying to go on the overall vibe, put them out there. But far out, you had that team on the field, I reckon you'd win a championship. Anyway, should we look at the more depth and the detail then? We're going to go real nerdy on these stats because that's what we've all been waiting to do. Les, do you want to kick us off on some key ones?
Yeah, I think some of the key ones. We talked earlier about set piece being the bread and butter of the game. It is the launching pad for your attack. And overall, it was the Blues who took out the scrum set piece. They were 100% scrum retention. So they did really well there. Poua 67, so they were our lowest, with Manawa and Matatū. Manawa 92% and Matatū 80%. So obviously for the Blues, they'd be stoked with that. For the Poua, when you're struggling already to retain ball, you want to nail your set piece. So 67%, that's a hard day in the office.
It is. And it also means if you're winning scrums like that, it means you can take much more chances on attack. Because one of the key way that you end up in a scrum is from a knock-on, right? From a handling error. And so if you are out there and you're throwing things around and you know that when you drop it, or even if you make a good tackle and make the other team drop it, they can still win their own ball back. It's pretty demoralizing stuff. And so, you know, we always used to talk about it when you were playing another team. Like, there's all the games within games when it comes to rugby union. And one of them is always that battle for the scrum. If you start winning that game, you can start tearing a team apart. You start with their scrum and then you move to the next one, which is your lineouts, of course.
Yes, so talking about lineouts. So for the Blues, again, best in the competition so far. They were operating at 90%. So great work by Atlanta Lolo here and Grace Ngango, and also obviously the lifting pods and things like that. But everyone always looks at the hooker, let's be honest. So 90% for the Blues, 73% for Matatū, which probably, like we mentioned earlier, probably not the standard that they would hold themselves to, having 7 of their forward pack in the Black Ferns. And a lot of starters in there as well. So 73%, Manawa 69%. That's probably not to their standard as well, as a lot of their tries in 2024 were off lineouts. So I'll just be open to our, or clear with our listeners, that having someone like a Luca Connor missing was pretty evident when it came to the Manawa lineout.
Yeah.
And then unfortunately for the Poua, again, operating at 55%. That's, we've already sort of talked about the impacts that a poor scrum can have. It's no different with a line out.
It isn't, and you're right. I think the interesting thing is obviously with that overall percentage when it comes to Matatū, I don't know what the split is between first and second half. My instinct was it got better for them in the second half. That particularly their lineouts seemed to settle, which you would hope. And what also I think, you know, if you were Georgia, that's what you're aiming for. You're like, yeah, okay, it's a rubbish one. Park it. We're going to go on to the next one. That's always something that you try and work with. I remember years ago I had a mate of mine when I first transitioned over from the flank to the hooker. She gave me great advice. As a young hooker, which is when it goes wrong in the moment, blame everyone else. And then after the game, check the tape. But you have to kind of get yourself out of the hole so that you don't, you know, the worst thing you can see is when it compounds as a hooker, when you see them start to get tense, when they they start to dread being there. If you see that stiffness start to creep in there, that's always a bad thing. So I think the way that, you know, Georgia was able to kind of park and move on, like, I expect they're going to be much better when it comes to next week.
100%. We know how much set piece is a part of their DNA, but also the combinations of that front row. They'll tidy that up pretty quick. I don't think that's going to be a concern. The biggest shift is going to have to be seen by the Poua in both the lineouts and the scrum moving forward. So, yeah, strength to them.
A shout out I do want to make here is that I think Mel Bosman did some beautiful work with the Poua last year, particularly when it came to our scrums, really started to turn them around there. We don't have her in the hole for us this year to kind of bring us that muscle, and I think we're missing it. Mel now an assistant coach with USA Rugby, but I think that, yeah, obviously going to be a point of work on this week. I think maybe finding our combinations though too. Like I mentioned, I thought Nisi did great when she came on at prop. Are we settled in who we're starting with? Are we maybe going to look at a little changes there? Are we also, you know, that injury list for the Hurricanes is pretty long. Is that also going to change things up for us? Because, you know, Fawn Birkin, she's currently out as well and is another option for them at hook.
So moving on then, we've got, we're going to look into penalties. So that was one of the things as I was commentating the Matatū Manawa game was just, man, the penalties are just coming in hot. So we've got some numbers here. Matatū and Poua, both the highest for penalties conceded. So, penalties at 15. So 15 for them. Manawa were actually the most disciplined of all 4 teams with only 9 penalties and the Blues with 12. So, yeah. What's your take on that?
Did everyone forget how to play rugby in the time between, or did we just forget what touch judges are? I always think sometimes we get away with things in training runs because we don't have all the eyes on us, and it takes us a minute to remember that not only do we have a person in the middle and 2 on the sideline, we've got all those eyes watching us, so you actually can't get away with those cheeky offsides, that cheeky hand in the ruck. You gotta be more clever than that.
And I think too, that's why preseason is so important. I'm not going to go into this because we already said it last week. It needs to be a bigger preseason to benefit these girls. But preseason is so important. Your off-season fitness in terms of that helps your discipline.
Yeah.
When you're fitter, you can think more clearer and you're not turning over penalties and things like that. So all of that's really crucial. And when you're looking at games, the Blues Poua game, that's 27 penalties collectively. It's just... It was quite, you
messy.
could feel that. Yeah, that's a nice way to put it. I think both games, there were a lot of messy patches. So I'm gonna put that down to the limited preseason. But yeah, something we have to tidy up real quick.
Yeah, you would hope they've learnt from that one.
So moving on there, turnovers conceded. So this is probably adds to, when you're not able to put together that fluid consistency in your attack, your turnovers conceded can be a big part to play in that. So Matatū actually had the least turnovers conceded with 16, Poua 17, didn't have as much ball though.
Yeah.
Manawa 18, and the Blues obviously gave away the most turnovers with 19, but would have had majority of territory and possession in that game.
That's handling errors, because it's interesting, right? As much as that would be when we think turnovers, I think a lot of the time we think of that at the ruck. I think the main way we were coughing up ball was literally coughing it up. Loose carries, throwing something that maybe wasn't on, timings being in back off. I saw a lot of ball, while it might not have been turned over, it did go right behind. That we had a lot of attacking lines where people had to turn around, pick up and regroup. So I think, again, this is the type of thing you see get better. Yeah, if we had preseason, we had more preseasons. I mean, I think about this. You watch the Super Rugby for the men. They do the same thing. It's always the first 6 rounds are messy as, then all of a sudden they're hissing when it comes to playoffs. Unfortunate things for us is we only have 6 games. So we're going to have to get better at this real quick. So we will hope. I think that, to me, is going to be just a number that I'm going to track over the next few weeks. Just for the health of the comp, right? We're going to want that to come down.
Get tracking, girl. Get tracking. We all benefit from your spreadsheets. Line breaks now. So, as expected, the Blues 12 line breaks in their game, in comparison to Poua and Matatū both having 7, and then Manawa only 4. Which, I think that was in line with one of our predictions around midfield punch. We said that we weren't really sure who the Manawa had in terms of midfield punch. Who was their strong physical carry through the middle of the field, or even on the outsides, because they didn't go with any power wingers. They kind of went with your fast, evasive wingers. So yeah, could it be related to that?
I think so. And I think, ultimately though too, I mean, that's what translates to scores, right? Apart from a set piece being what launches an attack, it's what happens once you break that line and how everyone reacts to that. Those are your 2 places you score tries most of the time. I mean, Manawa, I think if you looked at how they were, getting their ball, it was a lot of grind and, inch by inch by inch, and good on them for doing that. And boy, do they love doing that, pick and go, nice and tight. But it's a lot easier for a team and everyone's fatigued if you can just score off a beautiful break, isn't it?
Yeah. Someone that did add some midfield punch, I thought, was Crystal Murray when she came on.
You know what? Why aren't they looking, legitimately, why aren't they looking at her as a 12-13 option? She's played there for the Kiwi Ferns. She's played in the midfield. She is looking so fit at the moment. Is there a crazier thing to suggest?
It's pretty crazy.
People said that when I said Niall Williams-Guthrie should play on the flank last year, and look how well she went. So let me play.
I would not have thought that was crazy. I think Niall was definitely a 7. She's a great Lucy.
Oh,
Okay,
100%.
moving on. Our tackle percentages. So actually everyone done really well. I thought tackle percentage was pretty good across all 4 teams. 84% for Blues and the Poua. Matatū at 86% and Manawa with 90%. So they'd all be pretty happy. The defensive coaches out there will be pretty happy with those stats, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and again, for sides that were making a lot of tackles, there'd be, I reckon if I was the Poa and I was looking at that, we did talk up their defense. And while, they conceded a lot of points, that's still a lot of tackles they're making out there. So you'd be happy that they were holding that percentage so high.
So then it begs the question, right? So tackle percentage skill set then is good. Is it the system?
I think so. I think if you were watching the game on the weekend, man, we were narrow. We were so narrow. A couple of times there, I saw Aish ending up like second 5-ish when they were coming around the corner. So if you're talking about you can play narrow and you can shoot up, but what the Blues then did was just a skip pass. If you looked at how a lot of those line breaks came, they just pushed an extra skip pass, and so all of a sudden that narrow, we're just left there chasing ourselves. So I would say I would be very surprised if they don't get a big drill on that. I actually think we saw a little bit of that in their game against Matatū in the preseason, but they got away with it because it was more of that, you can really bring that physicality to Matatū, and they're maybe not, as willing to meet you as, say, a Blues pack. They love playing that style, so they, will come head on. So, yeah, I just thought there were a couple of times here, like I say, where your edge player is marking up right in the midfield. That is one pass to beat you, and I think they're going to want to fix that.
So those are pretty much the stats for the week, I think. We're happy with those main stats there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it paints you a bit of a picture in terms of how things played out on the field, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the only other thing I want to say in terms of stats is I told you Sam Taylor was one to watch. She was the top tackles made.
Yes, Christina Sue will be very happy about that. 24 tackles for a lock in a game. And yeah, they had a bit of context around that. They were on D majority of the time, but that's a big work rate. I think she played the full 80 as well.
She did. So I'm I'm just pushing again for Sam Taylor supremacy. I have taught our local MP, Tamitha Paul, she asked me, what's something I can say when people ask me about the team? I'll just say, how about that Sam Taylor? So she's been practicing that line. What's one you would give people, Liz? Is there any line you'd throw to people if they're wanting to sound knowledgeable to their friends?
Oh, you've put me on the spot there. So I was also thinking too, who's our cool MPs in the Waikato region, It has to be Hannah.
Yeah, not a bad one, honestly. And then you've got Chloe in Auckland, and then who do they have down south? Oh, trying to think. We could make a little, coalition.
Kendra Coxedge.
She the local MP? Probably, eh? Other thing I did want to ask you about, because I saw another one of them on the panel, so I wanted to bring it up, because obviously we had Michaela Break. That's hard for me to continue to correctly, not Blythe Break. Okay, we had Michaela Break on the panel. I have my own personal opinions about Sevens players on rugby union panels, but that's an aside for another day. But what I did think was interesting was seeing her, and then also seeing Chelsea make a little comment about maybe actually, because what we had originally thought was that if Sevens players were going to be available for selection for the Rugby World Cup, they had to make themselves available for Aupiki. But then Chelsea was asking the question that maybe that's not the case. What then? Who do we end up then trying to go shopping for?
Yes. Chelsea did mention that on the panel. So obviously, there's a bit of wind out there that maybe the Sevens girls are being released for World Cup. There's mixed emotions around that, I think. There's a big chunk of me that is like, awesome. This is awesome for the Black Ferns. The part that probably breaks my heart is we are still not finding a sustainable solution to growing our 15s program, you know. But maybe that's for another day because we are deep into the clock now. But yes, I mean, who now? We can play guessing games about who we think those girls might be. I'd have to say, Stacey Waka?
Yes.
Teresa Setafano. These are the girls that have typically come across, you know. Do we see a young Georgia Miller come across? I'd love to see Reese, to be honest. I would love to see Reese Pody Lane as a halfback. I think she would be phenomenal. But yeah, who knows now? It would be a wait and see, I'd imagine.
It'll be an interesting one. If Reese comes, then we're kind of looking like Canada with Liv Atts, who plays both 9 for 15s and for 7s. And maybe we're just copying Canada. I have heard rumours out there that the centralisation of the Bay might be done. I have heard these rumours. The reality is New Zealand Rugby has been doing a lot more investment in these hubs now that they have attached to these franchises. So we have more of an emerging infrastructure around the country. This is also a classic thing in sports. You always have a yo-yo between centralising and localising and what is best. But look, if you're putting that money in locally, if you've got these hubs there, what is the point in asking all of these young sevens players to come and train out of that space now? And you start to look at the number of people we have essentially on training contracts. Why wouldn't we make them available? I think we've had this relationship for a number of years where we're separate, but we're not. Like, we're separate except for when it comes for big years. And so maybe the relationship is to look, like I say, at what Canada does. Canada, you are a high-performance athlete for Canada. You will get called in for 15s, you will get called in for 7s, but there is an understanding that you are in the mix for both. Is that the conversation that New Zealand Rugby now gets at? And in a part of me actually thinks that's a cleaner one than the one we have right now.
Gosh, this is the thing. It's still blowing my mind. I don't even know where I stand on it because on one hand, I see the success of the centralised program of the sevens. Like, they are not the best in the world by chance. They are phenomenal. And so what does that do to the sevens program and to that the legacy of that team? If there's truth in this, you know, I don't know. I don't even know where I stand. But and then the other side of me is going, are the hubs operating to their full capacity? Are they actually doing their jobs for the 15s game right now? And if not, why would we then centralize the sevens into it? So yeah, I've got a few questions that I'll probably need to process and ask myself before I form a stance on it. I'm not too sure.
No, that's fair enough. All right, that's plenty for to think about and have a look at. Team lists, I'm told they come out at 5 p.m. on Thursday, and I'm also told that they will be looking to include injury lists, thank goodness, alongside those team lists this week. So that'll be a lot easier to kind of analyse what they've got done in terms of selections. But other than that, team, we hope you enjoyed the action and took something away to give you something to watch for this weekend.
100%. Another big week ahead. I'm still fizzing. I'm excited for Aupiki. 6 weeks, just not long enough for me. But I think we're going to see better games this week.
Yeah, hopefully Poua upset Manawa. Okay, that's it. That's it for the week.